Welcome to Take the Lead Radio with Dr. Diane Hamilton, where she interviews some of the most successful leaders, entrepreneurs, authors, speakers, and other individuals who will inspire you to take the lead in your career and personal life. And now, here is Dr. Diane Hamilton.
I am here with Barry Rhein, who's the founder of Barry Rhein and Associates. He is a sought-after sales trainer and consultant in Silicon Valley. He is an expert in selling through curiosity. His sales seminars and curiosity-based methodology have been widely praised for moving far beyond theory and into simple, practical steps that have an immediate impact on attitude, skills, effectiveness, and earnings of the participants. He teaches a course about curiosity-based selling at the business school at Stanford University. And he also serves on the board of advisors at DocuSign, which I'm looking forward to meeting you. If you're going to the event coming up soon, I'll be there. So it's nice to have you, Barry. Are you going next month?
I will be there, of course.
Well, then we'll get a video where our face and our voice actually sync.
I think that's a great idea right there. I love that idea.
We've had a few technical difficulties today, but we're both so curious that we didn't give up. We're just going to forge on and see if we can get this to sync up okay. But if it doesn't, at least listen to it, because we really are going to cover some really important things. I'm fascinated in the work you do with curiosity. As you know, I'm writing a book about that. So when I heard you taught this course at Stanford, I'm like, what? I want to take that. Well, what do you teach in that course?
It's actually it's called The Fundamentals of Effective Selling. I get second-year MBA students, and we talk about both traditional and non-traditional sales. And it's sort of for me, it's a great way to sort of end my career. I've been doing this 35 years now. It was a great validation to be asked to be on faculty at Stanford University, especially with no degree. So I never went to four-year college. So for me, what fascinates me about these students is we give these amazing people masters in business, and we don't teach them how to generate revenue. It makes no sense to me.
Well, there's a lot of things that I think we could be teaching that maybe we don't. And I think that the soft skills area is a big part of what we need to focus on a lot in these, all levels of education. I would like to see more of. And I think that curiosity kind of falls into that squishy area of how do you teach this kind of thing. And I'm fascinated by how you teach it. And you deal with the selling perspective, but you're dealing with curiosity in general. And let's just go into curiosity a little bit, because it's tied into motivation. It's tied into drive. How do you differentiate between drive, motivation, curiosity? Are they all kind of similar, or are they different? I mean, how do you look at that?
So for me, I have an interesting job, right? For 35 years, my job has been to go in, and I would literally, 35 years ago in Silicon Valley, there's plenty of startups, and I would go in and meet CEOs or founders of little startups under $3 million a year in revenue. And my value proposition was simple. I would come out and say, look, tell me what you're trying to do. Where's your frustration in your revenue generation, your customer engagement side of the model? I'll come in and do a full evaluation. I'll look at your messaging, how you sell, your skill sets, your people, your sales tools, your enablement, really everything about how they go to market. And I'll come back with a recommendation. You tell me where you want to go. You tell me what you think's in the way. I'll come up with what I believe is in the way. And if we agree to come up with an end result, if we agree to do a training, then what happens is I would go in and actually do the training, and I only got paid if we got the results. So my value proposition originally was, if you don't like me, don't pay me. If you don't get the results, don't pay me. No matter what, I will stand by my results. So for you create whatever paperwork you want for your company to protect your company. My results will speak for themselves. What's in our way of doing business? And so that's how I started this business 35 years ago. Now, I will tell you, I've never not been paid. In the first few years, I never got paid on time. It was sort of an amazing, for me, I had been an employee and I got fired a bunch of times and started a business as a result. That's a whole nother story. And what was interesting is, how do you get people to transform their beliefs and their behaviors. I mean, that it's because if you go after behaviors, you will not get long-term change. It just doesn't happen that way. And so you have to go after the belief structure, because if you think about it, our beliefs drive our behaviors. So how we think about the world causes us to act or not act, depending on a circumstance. Well, in the game of selling, you have salespeople that when they get into class, if they have any level of success, they do this. They cross their arms. They sit there and go, what can you prove to me? And I learned early on, I never tell, or you'll never hear me say you're doing something wrong. I don't believe in a right or wrong. There's an effective or non-effective. Now, there's extremes, right? So you can't lie. You can't, say you're going to do something and not. I mean, there's some issues in life, but for selling, for me, and for being curious, how do we go and understand what's important to people? How do we genuinely connect without an agenda? And the magic of curiosity is the only agenda is to understand. The problem with most salespeople is their agenda is to get a deal. And if you go to get a deal, you lose the opportunity to really create a space to let greatness and information and data flow in a way that allows people to be comfortable sharing with you what you need. So as I think about curiosity, there's a doing of curiosity, which is ask questions. There is a beingness, which is that genuine curiosity. If you go after the doing, ask questions. There's every sales training on the planet, every class in any school that has anything about sales says you got to ask better questions. Okay, well, that's great. So read a book. How much change did I double my revenue from reading a book? No, I did not. Did I fivefold my conversion rates? No. And the reason why is I read the book, it makes sense, but there's a whole bunch of stuff in my way of being able to change those behaviors. So for me, I learned a long time ago, and it's my sort of competitive differentiation, if you will, and I would rather think of it as the way I view the world. For me, it's let's just go genuinely be curious. Let's not have an agenda. Let's go serve people. Let's find out what's important to them. And if it turns out I can help you, I'm going to be the first person asking for the business at the end. But if it turns out I can't, I have a responsibility to say I can't based on what you're telling me. Now, if you want these 5 things and I can do these 3, where do these 3 enter into your priorities? And I can do those. But if I can't solve your business problems, I have to say, I'm sorry. Next, we'll meet again on the next company and move on from there. But those ideas, this kind of thought of curiosity, it's very foreign to most people because of their agenda.
Well, it's interesting because in sales, you are only as good as your last deal is what they tell you, right? And so they have this, I was in sales for many decades. I hate to say it was that long, but it was. And you have this pressure on you to reach a certain goal. And we talk about what's in your way. You said we got to work on what's in our way. What's in most people's way?
Their thinking.
Okay.
Would you rather be right or would you rather be effective? Would you rather be right or would you rather be in a relationship? Would you rather be right or would you rather be happily married? Would you rather be right or would you rather have your kids want to hang around you? Righteousness is the root of, I believe, the majority of people's happiness.
Well, so do you always have to give up your sense of wanting to be right? I mean, to be good in sales? I'm thinking, with sales, there's a lot of times people say things to you when you're a salesperson that you just really don't want to hear or you don't agree with, and we were taught actually kind of the sandwich technique when I was young. They would say, we'll support them first, that they have the right to say this ridiculous thing they just said, and then limit them and say, but, kind of have, let me show you this other way of thinking. Is that what they're still teaching these days, or is that completely thrown out? And what's the latest?
Well, I don't know what they are, who they are, what they teach, but I can tell you what we teach.
How about you?
So a person gets the right to object. We get the right to be curious. Mm-hmm. A person gets the right to say, you know what, this is just way too much money for me. Mm-hmm. They get that right. Here's the problem. when salespeople, and I'll argue human beings, when they perceive rejection, they then react. Well, if you think about rejection, the majority of responses to rejection, other than curiosity, have risks. So some people, when they get rejected, they get aggressive. They'll, oh no, let me tell you why you're wrong. I'm going to share with you my knowledge. That would be one technique. They'll get defensive on other areas. They might withdraw. If someone gets rejected, they might just go, you know what, this is just not going to work for me. So there's ways that people in rejection, because they view it as being rejected. And I'm going to argue that's not that case at all. If someone says, Barry, your training is terrible, my reaction in that moment must be the same thought as if someone says, Barry, I've heard amazing things about your training. At that moment, I have to be curious, what is up for them? It's not an indication of who I am. So if someone said, Barry, I'm calling you because I heard great things about your training. I go, thank you. What did you hear? Tell me what, and by the way, how do you see that being helpful for you? How do you think I could make a difference in what you're, doing? So I'm curious in that. Now, if someone says, I've heard some bad things. I am so sorry. What did you hear? And help me understand that. And on what was the context? And I'm curious, what are you trying to accomplish? And oh, by the way, what if it turned out that maybe that is not necessarily the case? What would your thoughts then be? And so we need to help other people think, and I have a saying, right? I have a couple sayings in my training. One, no biggie to me, no biggie to them. It's just information. And what I mean by that is, if they ask a question or they have an objection and it's not a big deal to me and I can be curious, it won't be a big deal for them. It just won't. Hey, would you, by the way, I want to tell you, we really like you, but your price is too high. That might be an example.
Right.
Well, I might come at that and say, thank you. Let's take price out of it for a minute. Why do you like us? Why would you select us? Help me understand what you're thinking there is. And oh, by the way, how would you like to reconcile the price? I don't need to tell them what to do. I need to create a space through curiosity, you're writing the book, to get people to draw their own conclusions. And so other than being known as I'm a great spouse, a great parent, and a great friend, I want on my gravestone, getting a person to think a thought they never thought before. That's what I want. Well, getting a person to think a thought they never thought before.
Are all thoughts positive thoughts, though? I mean, how do we know which, I think that, a lot of things in sales is, the mistakes we make, I should say, are that we don't ask enough questions. So that's curiosity, of course, because we're selling to people without really knowing their pain points. And sometimes I've told this story before where I called on this doctor, gave this, what I thought was a great presentation as a pharmaceutical rep, walked into the elevator a few minutes later, ran into him and asked him if he worked in the building because I didn't even look at him or ask him any questions. I didn't even remember meeting him in a way because I was so wrapped up in what I was saying. And it was mortifying at the time, I was like early 20s. And he goes, you just gave me a presentation. I mean, just imagine, I sunk down because it was the most ineffective ever presentation. I mean, you couldn't be worse if you're not asking questions or finding out if you're even selling what you should be selling to this guy, or what their pain points are, or what their problems are. And so I think a lot of salespeople, we just get taught, you got to get this out. You've got to say these words. You've got to do this thing. And sometimes it's almost like when you give a speech, you want to say so much that you stop realizing that you should be interacting. You know what I mean? So I think that the biggest issue I saw in sales is just the pressure they feel. Do you see it any different for different generations? Is it the same Glenn Gary, Glenn Ross generation that we see in the past, or is it getting any less stress? Are we putting less pressure on salespeople, or is it always the same?
Well, no, Glenn Gary, Glenn Ross, I think that's the exception. And by the way, I think with technology and social media and all that, and now Glassdoor, and there's all these different sites to evaluate companies, and you can't get away with that stuff, and never could back then, but for sure not now. It's interesting. Sales, and by the way, I have lots of customers. Well, DocuSign's one of those, and I I've done lots of trainings and transformed companies.
Mm-hmm.
What is always amazing to me is, and you said it best, we have to, you can't pitch without knowing what their needs are. And it isn't about asking questions, because I will argue practice does not make perfect. Perfect practice makes perfect. So I know a lot of salespeople that say, I know how to ask questions. I'm like, no problem. What we do at the very first, when we do a sales transformation project, we'll actually go in for 3, 4, 5 days, depending on what we're trying to do as a company and what we're trying to accomplish as an end result. And the very first thing I do in every one of my trainings and in my class at Stanford is I say, before you get to know who I am or any training, I have 2 exercises I want you to do, please. The first one is on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being perfect. I want you to do a quick self-evaluation. And here's all these categories: how listening, asking questions, building rapport, general basic fundamentals of selling. And there's 2 scales for each question. And I say, I want you to do the first scale of each question. So they do that. I go, now I have excuse me. The second exercise is I'm going to read you 4 sentences, 5 sentences, a very short paragraph. It's going to be from a customer of yours. It will sound very familiar. And I want you to pretend you're on a sales call. And first part is I want you just to write down whatever notes you want to take. So if you were on a sales call and they said this paragraph, take notes as if you were on that call. And then I'm going to hit my stopwatch and I'm going to say go. I'm dating myself, right? Stopwatch versus iPhone. I hit my timer. And I want you to come up with a list of all the open-ended questions you would want to ask if you were on a first discovery call. And there's no right or wrong. Individual exercise, go. And that's how we start our class. So everybody does this self-evaluation, and they all give themselves really high marks. Salespeople, right?
Right.
And then I read the storyline, they take notes, and then I have them come up with questions. And they come up with between 8, and the best ones come up with about 15 questions. And then we put that away and I say, great, welcome to class. Interesting. I now have a snapshot of how you listen. I have a snapshot of how you take notes. And I have a snapshot of how you process data in the form of how you ask questions, because they're written down. It's indisputable. We can't argue that.
Right.
Now, what if I told you there's 40 or 50 key questions that you need to ask to be able to know whether you can get a deal done here or not? Now, some of you did 5 or 6, some of you did 15. I'm saying there's 50 or 60. What is the risk to you and your family if you don't know those 50 to ask, but your competition does?
Well, I'm hearing them right off the bat going, I'm not going to have time to ask 50 questions, right? So what do you say?
That's exactly right. So, And so when they go, well, yeah, by the way, there's no way you gave us enough time. Then I say, absolutely. Let me ask you this. How do you know your 15 are the most effective if you don't know the 50?
So, but your customer, how much time are they going to give you to, how many questions can you realistically ask them?
No, so here's what I'm doing when I start off a class. I'm getting people to open to the possibility, what if there's an easier, more effective way? What if I don't know what I don't know? How would you I don't know what I don't know. So for me, I need people to start to learn. They don't have all the answers. And when you talked about how do people get out of their way, I can't tell them they're terrible. You can't tell them they're terrible. Their bosses can't tell them they're terrible. The only one that will in a meaningful way can say that is themselves. When they say, I need to be better at this. I had no idea how atrocious I was. I had no idea that I'm leaving so much money on the table. I had no idea you could even ask that. So it's opening up a mind to the possibility of, what if you don't know that you don't know?
There's so much we don't know. I use that expression a lot. What if you don't know what you don't know? And I think a lot of people need to get either help through consultants, or they need to get help through peers, or, and it's really hard for a lot of people to even accept the fact that there's stuff they don't know, because you've only lived in this vacuum of what you thought you knew. And that's why I was so interested in the book on curiosity, because I think if we could just expand our minds just a little bit this way and a little bit that way, I think a lot of people at work are really, the reason we have such low engagement is maybe some people are misaligned in their jobs. Maybe they would be better in different areas that they've never even experienced because they're afraid to even try things. I mean, what kind of things other than fear do you think hold people back from being curious?
It's interesting. My last two raws. There's an industry that I am fascinated by. I was fascinated with them 20 years ago, and it's sort of the last industry that I want to now make a difference on the planet, and that is the network marketing world. So if you think about the Amways of the world, the Mary Kays, the Avons, these are people that are non-salespeople. Mm-hmm. They get into the business with a dream of making a difference for themselves and their family. It's the ultimate, and for me, I think, as a human being, right? Mm-hmm. How do I create greatness for my family? I love that concept. They get into these businesses, and within days or hours even, they're out. And I have done and dabbled in a few trainings with a couple, 3,000 people over different organizations over time. And we can tenfold the amount of people that stay in the business. We can reduce the amount of people that get out right away. And the reason we can is they just need to know what to do. They need to know how to do it. But that's all lecture. And then we have to have them practice where they develop confidence and realize they're not selling, they're being curious. And everybody can get behind this idea of being curious. And if you can develop some confidence with someone genuinely being curious and not taking rejection personally, you can move mountains. I built a career out of it, 35 years. And so for me, my big thing is, how do you make a difference to millions of people on the planet? And now with technology, we cracked the code in how we do distance learning, very different than anybody else. Mm-hmm. And who has millions and millions and millions of people that are opting in to want to create something for their families, the network marketing world. So that's, for me, it's millions of people that have fear. They're told what to do through lecture, but when you can give them an idea of, I just need to go be curious and how to ask the right questions and genuinely be interested and genuinely care and have them practice, very short time, mm-hmm. but with huge confidence, you change the world. And so it's an interesting lecture-based training doesn't develop confidence. Therefore, people can't get out of their comfort zone, which means they only get to be as good as they are. No change.
Well, you said ask the right questions. And so how do you know if you're asking the right questions? I mean, in anything that you're curious about, you know what I mean? That's a tough thing.
It is. We spend time in our trainings on just that very topic. How do you ask and by the way, it's the right questions, and I'll say the most effective questions, mm-hmm. but then it's without leading and without an agenda. So years ago, I got a call from HP, and it was a human factors group of engineers that were working with a group of designers, engineers. They were building products, and they called up and I said, well, that's interesting. You want training for engineers, and I'm a sales trainer, so connect the dots for me, please. And they said, we have the smartest engineers on the planet. We go out, we talk to customers. Our people are so smart, they already know the answers. So they ask questions in a way to validate what they believe, and then we build products, and sometimes people don't want to buy them. And I'm like, okay, what's the impact of that? Hundreds of millions of dollars of wasted time, energy, and effort. So, right? And so I share that story with you because the most effective questions, if I typed them up and handed them to you, that doesn't work either.
Right.
Because it's the way we show up. It's the genuine curiosity. And that's sort of our secret sauce. We have figured out how to be able to teach that in a way that people can get it quickly and they can implement it immediately and put in change.
Well, you give that's really great advice. And I'm curious where you are. I'm watching a few animals walk behind you. Where are you?
Pretty soon you might see some coyotes or a cow, or we have a family ranch.
A few sheep. I'm not sure what's going on.
There was actually, right before we got on, a turkey walked by. So we live, I have a, yeah, it was pretty awesome. I was like, dang it, that would have been totally perfect. We have a family ranch. We're a big ranching family. I know, especially, and the males, they're right now, the turkeys, you can call to them and they'll puff up. So these beautiful beings. Yeah, it's really cool.
Make sure one of those.
Next time I'll try and coordinate a little better.
That would be great. I would love that. Well, this has been so much fun, Barry. I'm sure a lot of people want to know more about how they could get sales training or find out more about you. Can you share your website and ways they can reach you?
Sure. Sellingthroughcuriosity.com is a great way. And of course, Barry Rhein, Rhein, you can search me and I'll come up a million different ways. And it's been really fun. No, good luck now. So what are you going to be doing on your book?
Well, I'm still working on it. I'm creating an assessment to measure what holds us back right now. And it's in actually being in survey. It's in the validity and reliability testing part right now. So that's fun. Very nice. And so, yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. We'll have a lot to talk about. If you're there next month, I will meet you in person and I'm looking forward to that. You got it. And thank you so much for being on the show. Thanks for your time. See you soon. Bye now.